a lot with women that come to me in this industry and in our community is that they will say things like they'll really be concerned about things that aren't all that important. So things like, what's this exact thing that guys like? One of the big things that I get all the time is women will come and they'll be like, okay, you've got to have big boobs and a nice big butt, and you've got to be this tall and this thin and this and that, and it's kind of like this thing where they grabbed a whole bunch of different things that they know that different guys like, and they shoved them all together, and they're like, this is what men want, right? And it's really interesting because a lot of those things that they talk about aren't actually the most important things for a guy. Guys make decisions about who they date, who they are in a relationship with, who they want to be with in a long-term relationship versus something that's just casual, based on emotion, right? They do it because of how they feel. They feel a certain way. And it might be with a woman that in fact, a lot of times it's with a woman who isn't what they visually thought in their minds, right? Maybe of some guys who do this. They're like, oh, I want this type of a woman, and then they end up with somebody completely different. Or women who do that for a matter of fact, where they're like, oh, I'd love to have this kind of guy, and then they end up with somebody that's completely opposite of what they said, because we are attracted to certain things and we feel a certain way. And that's what we make most of our decisions on in our lives, regardless of what we're making decisions on. And so today I wanted to talk about this subject of feeling really good in your body, feeling really great about yourself and who you are, because it's that emotion that you bring to a guy that is by far the most important thing. And I wanted to bring on this great expert that we have here, Una Duncan. She's a world, an international best-selling author. She's a fitness expert, and she really helps people connect with themselves, connect with their emotions, and really love themselves and love their bodies and love exercising. And so I just wanted to come on and bring her. We actually met at a Tony Robbins event. I just wanted to throw that out there. We got along great at the event. And so I thought it'd be fun to have her on the channel and come and talk to you guys about her expertise. So,
and we jumped into a freezing cold river together.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We jumped into a freezing cold river together.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for the intro, Matt. You know what was reminding me when you said, women will often have an idea of the type that they're attracted to, but then sometimes they end up with someone who doesn't necessarily fit that type, but it makes them feel that way. And the biggest example I was thinking of, if you ask a lot of women, they'll say, oh, I like a really tall man. Right? But if you get a man who's not that tall, but he really owns his masculinity and he makes you feel in your feminine and feel taken care of, or whatever those feelings are that you want, then you're like, oh, I'm fine without the tall. This is the feeling that I wanted. And so that was the kind of example that I could really relate to as a woman that you're talking about. And I do think that there are so many women out there that we are brainwashed women. We are brainwashed to think that men will not be attracted to us if we don't have the boobs or the waist or the bum or the whatever is the latest. And by the way, you guys know that what men are attracted to changes all the time, right? Like when, in my short life, I'm 43. I still remember times when I wanted, to look like Linda Hamilton in Terminator. So she had this really buff kind of look. And then I remember in the 90s, what was really popular was enormous boobs, but like a stick, like Winona Ryder. I really wanted to look like Winona Ryder. And then now it's all about the bum. But when I was a teenager, like you couldn't have a bum. That was sort of really bad. It was all about the boobs. So this stuff changes all the time. And ladies, if we were to try and adapt our physical bodies to fit the latest trends of what men are supposedly attracted to, which is mostly BS. It's just fashion trends meant to sell us stuff. But if we were to try to change our bodies to fit this, we would go berserk, and we kind of do, right? So that is one of the reasons why it is so important to feel good right now, because as Matt was saying, it's really the way you make a man feel that he is attracted to. And he's going to feel so good if you feel good. I'm sure, Matt, you probably talk about this all the time. Like, that's what dudes want, right? They want to be around a woman who is happy and who's feeling good, and that they can feel like they are helping her feel good, right?
Yeah. Well, there's, I just want to mention one thing here. I have a friend that I used to hang out with a lot who was one of those kinds of guys who used to go for women who were like stick thin, right? And that was his type, and everybody knew that was his type. That was the kind of girl that he would go after when he saw somebody in a bar. He would go after the thin, really thin girl, right?
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because the woman that he ended up with was not this, super thin kind of woman that he would normally go after when you'd see him going after girls in the bar. Yeah. And he ended up, getting into this long-term relationship, and they've been seeing each other for a while. And it was interesting because I pulled him aside one time because I wanted to talk to him about it, because this is all I talk about for the most part, right? It's just like personal development stuff and dating and relationships.
Yeah,
and so I was like, hey man, his name's Michael. And I was like, hey Michael, normally you go for these kinds of women, and everybody knows about that. And, the girl that you're with now is not, nothing wrong with her by any means, but she's not that type that you normally would go for. And I was like, what's the deal with that? And what he told me was one of the most fascinating things I've ever heard. And he's like, yeah, man, I don't know. It's just when I saw her, it's just, there's something about her that just made me want to run over and just like grab her and start kissing her. Wow. And he's like, I know she's not the normal type that I go for. And if I would have told you what kind of a type that I look for, it wasn't her. Mm-hmm. But, there's something about her that just made me feel so attracted to her. And so I went over and talked to her, and, we're in a relationship now, and I still feel that way, which he said normally he doesn't. Like, after a period of time, he kind of loses interest and pulls away and all that kind of stuff and disappears. Right. And he said that he was just like, I don't know what it is about her, but she's got some kind of energy about her that I just connect with, and I just want to be around her all the time and just, hold her and kiss her and, tear her clothes off and make love to her. And so it was just a completely different experience that he had when he was connecting, instead of it just being this kind of superficial kind of body. I'm looking at her and I see this, this attractiveness from kind of a primal standpoint. It like goes even deeper, right? And it goes into something that's in his soul, right? Something
energetic connection
he's really looking for. Yeah. And so I just wanted to throw that in there because
I love that story. That's great. That's awesome. So here's one thing that I wanted to say, that one of the problems I think that a lot of women have when you start to think of, okay, yes, I know confidence is good, so I'm gonna start to be more confident. I'm gonna start to, and also magazines are always like, love yourself the way you are. You should, all that sort of stuff. We're constantly pummeled with, change your body, fit these beauty ideals. And then if you don't, but you should love yourself the way you are, but change it if you can, but love yourself the way you are. And right, that's kind of the messaging that we get all the time. But one of the problems that I think that women have with this idea of loving themselves the way they are is that they get concerned. Okay, wait a second. If I allow myself to be okay with the way I am right now, is that letting myself off the hook when I really feel like I need to lose, 10, 15 pounds, when I really should start exercising more or whatever, they really feel like they're going to be letting themselves off the hook, and that without that pressure that they're putting on themselves, then they will just, binge eat or let themselves go completely. So here's the thing. It's actually kind of the opposite. We have this idea that if we look in the mirror, we play boot camp sergeant with ourselves and say, okay, this is, you got to get rid of this and you got to fix that. Then we will shame ourselves into behaving properly. But it actually completely doesn't work that way. In fact, the more you beat yourself up, the more likely you are to binge, to skip your workouts, to feel depressed, which will cause that sort of cycle. And they've done studies on this. They did one, Matt, where they made a bunch of test subjects eat donuts. And then they gave half of the people messages of, self-compassion and said, hey, it doesn't matter that you ate the donut. We told you to do it. It's our fault. There's not even any calories in it. Don't worry about it. And then the other group did not get those messages. And then they had them sit and do like math or something like that. And they just happened to have candy on the tables. And guess which group ate twice as much candy? The ones that didn't get the messages of self-compassion, just unconsciously ate twice as much candy, even though they had just had the donut. And so this is the thing, is that if you are right now beating yourself up, thinking if I beat myself up, then I'll behave properly, I'll make myself feel bad enough in order to motivate myself, it won't work. It really won't work. And the second thing that I want you to know is that exactly like Matt was saying, not only are men attracted to the way they feel around you, but they feel like that around you because you feel like that about yourself. Like there is nothing more of a turnoff to a man. Actually, I mean, Matt, correct me, I'm not an expert in this, but this is my guess. This is my guess that when we put the burden on men to make ourselves feel good about ourselves, that's not a job they want. They don't want that job. We have to show up feeling good about ourselves. That's not their job to tell us that we're not fat or blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Right. It's just to interject there
Yeah,
real
please.
quick. It's just it's exhausting is what it feels like, right? It feels like, I mean, like initially it's not a big deal, right? Because you kind of feel like you're needed, right?
Sure,
You feel
sure.
like you have this job and you have this role and you're like, oh yeah, no, you're great. No, you look great and
Yeah.
everything's great. And yeah, oh, how are you feeling, right? But if you have to do that all the time, and she's constantly seeking it and she's contacting you and constantly baiting you for compliments
Yeah.
and trying to make herself feel better by connecting with you all the time, it just over time what ends up happening is guys start feeling tired and they start thinking in their mind, like, I don't know if I could be with her long term, because like this is something that he knows that he's going to have to deal with for the rest of your lives together. And so he's like, for a lot of guys, it ends up kind of cutting you off from being long-term relationship type of material, not because he doesn't want to have you as a long-term relationship, but because he doesn't feel like he's really up to the task, because, or if he even wants it, right? Like, do I want to experience this forever?
And even if he wants it, like, can I even be successful in helping her feel better? Because every time I tell her she looks fine, she says, no, I don't. So you're making him feel unsuccessful if you're kind of rejecting that idea.
Right.
So,
and also I just want to say one other thing is that what ends up happening is that it usually gets worse, right? Because at first, for the first couple of months that you meet somebody, there's kind of this persona thing, right? Where you're on like your good behavior and then you're right. And you're hanging out. And then over time, what happens is you start becoming more and more comfortable. And so your stuff starts coming out more and more and more.
Totally.
Right. And if it's like crazy, right, and it just keeps getting worse and worse, which is what ends up happening if you're really down on yourself and you're really depressed, and every time you're around him you feel good, but that's the only time you feel good is when you're around him. You start getting addicted to being around him and that emotion and whatever he does in order to trigger that emotional state that you have. And so you're constantly seeking it. Right. And for him, it's like overload, and
totally. And I think that you just touched on the kind of the most important thing is that we think we want, flat abs or like defined arms or whatever we think we want, a thigh gap. I don't know. Thigh gap is the thing now. We think we want these things, but actually what we want is the feeling we think we're going to have when we have these things. So it's not that, because a lot of people, this is what happens. They get the flat ab, or, maybe they get the flat abs, but if they've been constantly training themselves to be discontent with their body, they'll get the flat abs and they'll say, yeah, but I really got to lose some here, or I really got to get whatever. They'll come up with something else because that is the only neural pathway they've ever practiced. And then the other thing is that it actually won't work, like I said. But even if it does work, even if you managed to somehow get yourself down to the flat abs of 120 pounds or whatever you think your goal is, if you haven't been practicing the feeling that you actually want, you're going to get there and you're still not going to have that feeling. So what you need to understand is that it is the feeling that you want, and you have to start training for that feeling at exactly the weight you are at right now today. And it can be hard, like training for anything. It's like a muscle. It is a muscle. This is the muscle that you have to start building. And you got to start thinking about it as training, like any other kind of training. Because if you think you're going to get down to 120 pounds or whatever, and then suddenly you'll feel, sexy, confident, however you think you're going to feel, but you've never practiced it, that would be like asking yourself to do like a one-armed pull-up when you've never even carried your groceries. Like, you will not be able to access those feelings. You've never trained for it. So you have to start training for that now. And so you are going to start doing things like looking in the mirror and being like, holy crap, you look amazing. Like, giving yourself compliments. You're going to have to, like, I had one friend, actually, one of my clients, she said, Una, I exercise all the time. I eat really well. How can I get rid of the cellulite on my thighs? Okay. So now, if you were to hear that, you would say, what I asked her was, why do you want to get rid of the cellulite on your thighs? And obviously she's probably like rolling her eyes being like, duh, because I want to wear short shorts and a bathing suit. And what I want to say is, actually, you want to feel a certain way in short shorts and a bathing suit. So, and I knew this girl. I knew she exercised all the time. She ate really well. And I could probably give her a really strict regime. I could tell her about, using fake tan and Preparation H. Preparation H actually gets rid of cellulite, just tip if you ever do want to do that. So I could tell her about all this stuff, but it would be a massive project. And the project would be way better spent on her practicing wearing short shorts. And every time she has that thought of, oh my God, are people noticing my cellulite? Thinking like, damn right, they're looking at my hot legs. And the problem is that a lot of people, when I tell them that, they're like, oh, I'm not ready. Like, I can't, that's too much for me. That's like, for me to look in the mirror naked, even just that is often too much for women. And so then you just want to start, like any kind of training, start with the little baby steps and work up incrementally. So if you're not at a point where you can look at yourself in the mirror and be like, oh yeah, maybe you could just start by looking in the mirror and thinking, I accept this body. I'm grateful for this body. And then once you've got like a genuine sense of acceptance, of gratitude, maybe then you move up to, and this lipstick looks kind of nice on me. And then maybe you move up to, my legs actually look really good in heels, or whatever. So you start to it's just baby steps. You're building that confidence muscle, because really that is what you want. It's not the cellulite-free legs. It's not the whatever. It's the confidence.
Yeah, and that's the confidence, and that emotion is what brings everything else. The more you feel good about yourself, and the more you just feel good in general, right? Yeah. And the happier you are, and the more you're celebrating, and the more that you experience life feeling in a empowering emotional state, the more that you'll want to start feeling that more, and the more that you'll start doing things in order to start feeling that way. And one of the things that helps you feel that way more often is a little thing we call progress, right? Mm-hmm. Where you make progress doing something, right? Which can be, losing weight or getting the, toned butt you want, or any of that kind of stuff. Right. And the more that you move towards that, and you're coming from a space of feeling good, the more you start celebrating it, the more you feel good. And kind of like what Una was talking about earlier, though, if you haven't practiced this, if you haven't done it for a while, it can be a very challenging thing, and so you start out small, like what she was saying, and you can just do anything, right? Just one of the things that I started doing when I first started doing stuff like this is I would get like strips, and I would write out things, and I would place it places where I would see it. Right. And some of it was a little bit too bold for me, but at the same time, it started getting my mind thinking in the right direction, and started when I look at it, it's, one of the things that we talk about a lot on this channel is what you focus on, you feel, and what you feel, you receive. Right. Mm. And so you want to change your focus to the things that you want, and the things that you want to feel, and the thoughts, more importantly than anything. And I talk about this in my programs, right? The thoughts that you want to have, and doing it from a holistic standpoint, right? If you're just working on that external thing, which is what a lot of women get kind of caught up in, yeah, is they focus on, the external result. Mm-hmm. Just like what Una was saying, you end up at the result. If you end up at the result, and it's not enough. And it's never enough, and it never will be enough. And that's why you need to come from that place from the beginning. And if you're not in the beginning, just right now is a great time.
Totally. And you know what, Matt, that reminds me exactly what you said about progress is perfect. That is like another one of the secrets to making yourself feel better right now is that, so, you want that feeling, right? You think you're going to have when you get the abs or whatever, but the best part, this is so interesting. And Matt, maybe you remember Tony saying this, he's like, happiness is the progression, is making meaningful progress towards goals. Okay. So it's really funny. A lot of studies show that we're actually happiest when we're moving towards our goals rather than when we've achieved them. So if you want to start feeling happier and more confident about your body now, and this is totally backed up by research, you can even just do one workout, and already you have a slight shift of feeling a little bit more confident about your body. Any progress you make, I think even scheduling your workout. Once you've scheduled your workout, you're like, right, I'm on track. I'm making progress. Choosing a salad, you chose one salad and you're like, okay, I'm on track. I'm making progress. Every single one of these choices is a vote for the new identity, the identity that you want and the feeling that you want. And it doesn't have to happen when you've achieved the goal. It doesn't have to happen, for example, a thing I'm hearing a lot now is, well, when this pandemic is over, then I will blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, now, like there's always this chance to make a choice that's a vote for the identity you want. You don't have to wait for Monday. You don't have to wait for the summer. You can start that feeling right now by making a choice that's even just the tiniest little 1 degree towards the goal that you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What was there anything else that you wanted to talk about here, Una?
Let me see. I'm just looking at my notes here. I think that actually that thing about the progress, and you just reminded me, that was the other thing that I really wanted to nail home. And other than, I just want to reiterate the idea that when you start practicing these loving thoughts towards yourself and your body and complimenting yourself and finding little things to love and to feel confident about, it will feel like a lie. It 100% will. And you just keep doing it. It's a fake it till you make it kind of thing. And you do want to back it up until it feels somewhat reasonable. Like Matt was saying, like it was a little bit too much for him, but it's starting to train your brain in the right direction. And back it up until you can kind of buy it. And then you start adding on. And again, this is the muscle you want to train. The feeling of feeling confident, sexy, whatever is the feeling that you think you're going to have when you got the smoking body or whatever.
Okay.
Sometimes when people get access to this, philosophy of trying to make yourself monitoring your thoughts and thinking about the things that you want rather than thinking about the things you don't want, etc., is that they start to get a little panicky because they might have some negative thought patterns. Mm-hmm. And then they will start to beat themselves up for having the negative thought patterns. So one script that I offer to people is that if you do hear yourself beating yourself up, then your new script is, even though I have this negative thought pattern of hating my thighs or whatever, I still deeply and completely love and accept myself exactly as I am, even though I have this pattern. And the fact that I'm starting to hear it means that I'm getting closer to letting it go. Because when you bring it to your awareness, that's when you can consciously choose it or not. And if you start to hear it, then it's not, you're actually separating yourself from it a little bit. So that's one thing, not to freak out. If you hear yourself thinking bad thoughts and think, oh, I'm thinking bad thoughts, I'm going to binge or whatever. So no, you're hearing it. Now you can stop it and love yourself, even though you have those patterns.
And one thing I wanted to kind of throw in there as well, I'm just like, throwing in things over here. But one thing I want to throw in is, you kind of mentioned this thing where it's like, I don't really feel this. This isn't really me, right? I'm not, one of the things that we get from women all the time is they're like, oh, that's not me, right? Like saying anything other than what I would normally say isn't me, right? And it's like, is that really you? And mm-hmm. The metaphor that I have for this is, think of it more like trying on a new pair of pants, right? You put on a new pair of pants and it feels kind of awkward and weird because it's not, you just put them on for the first time and they're built from a factory. They're not made for you, right? But over time, what ends up happening is you kind of wear them in and they start feeling really comfortable. And next thing you know, they're your favorite pair of jeans. Totally. And so that's kind of the metaphor, right? Like sometimes you might start bringing up new thoughts or bringing up new emotions. And you're like, no, because some women kind of pull on these identities of like, I'm I'm just a negative person, or I'm just angry,
Right.
or I'm just whatever, right? I'm depressed. I'm,
Yeah.
whatever. And then you take that on and that becomes who you are, but that's not really who you are.
Yeah.
You're a growing and evolving person who can take on new identities and then feel a new way, and you can actually become a person who's a happy person, an excited person, a person who loves your life and experiences joy all the time if you take on a new identity and start thinking in a new way and pulling in these emotions that you can feel whenever you want to feel them.
Totally. I think, well, it's all about a growth mindset, right? Which has been, there's so much about growth mindset and how important it is. And it's so funny because I don't know if there's any women here who are moms, but we would never tolerate our children saying these absolutes about themselves. Oh, I'm just bad at math. I'm just, whatever. We'd say, no, you're bad at math now. There's a great personal development trip. When you do fortune cookies and there's that meme where you add in bed? Like you'll meet a stranger in bed or whatever. And then so what we're supposed to do is if you hear yourself beating yourself up about something, then you add yet onto it. So like, I'm not in great shape yet. I'm not good at Zumba, whatever, yet. And so you add the yet on there, and then it just reminds your brain that you have a growth mindset and that you can really accomplish anything you want, that these things are not fixed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I actually heard a guy, this personal development guy one time say, if you catch yourself thinking something that's negative, what you do is you change the way that you say it to, I haven't yet, right? Or I used to, like in the past, I thought, whatever, right? And then it associates it from you and it makes it this thing that you did once instead of taking it on as an identity of who you are.
It's an old version of you.